8:30 on this dull, cool Monday morning, but it's a warm welcome from all of us at Syngenta for our varieties virtual meeting, which we're all getting used to for the East region. But before I go into any introductions and agenda, I just want to do the housekeeping. So this webinar is being recorded. So just bear that in mind if you do request to be unmuted to ask a question, but we can send questions privately to me as the host via the Q&A function button at the bottom, and I will be asking all those questions at the end, time dependent on how many we get. And just remember, there is basis and also points available for this webinar, and you will receive an email afterwards to show you how to register for those points. So a quick run through the agenda introduction. So I'm Matt Kethwell. I'm area manager for West Norfolk, so we're in the east area of the UK. I'll do a quick season review just to kick off, and then I'll pass you over to Paul Roach, who will discuss our hybrid barley varieties, particular focus again on the east. And then following Paul into Matt Bull, who will just go through some of the hard wheat varieties that we have for the ideal for the east. And then finally, last but not least, we'll go and talk to Catherine Hamlin regarding malting barley, and that'll be both not just spring but also winter varieties also, and then we'll have time for the questions at the end. So a quick season review, just briefly. So autumn 2020 was a little kinder than the autumn of 2019 that we trying to forget very quickly, but it was pretty much of a hit one miss one in terms of the rain. So September was a good start for most people, and drilling got underway as planned. But then come October, it seemed to be a washout again, and everyone was sort of thinking or looking back to 2019 autumn, and is it going to happen again? But thankfully in November, the rains did go away for enough time for everyone to be able to get back out drilling again. And by the end of November, most of the planned area for that time was drilled up. But same old story, back in December, the rains came again. So everyone packed up, and in fact, it did stay rainy for quite a while, and even those late drill crops had a bit of a struggle to get away. But then the story of the spring in 2021 was obviously the long, cold, dry April that we had. We had a very long period of frosty nights, very cold weather, a bit unprecedented. Obviously, what was reported was the slow crop growth. We had plenty of hungry crops as well, because it was dry after a lot of the first nutrition was put on. Very small Septoria development in the wheat due to the dry conditions. There's evidence of a bit of stressed barley down to that cold weather and the dry, well, coming out of the wet into that cold weather. But the cold weather did help check some of the insect pests, which we might be seeing a bit of benefits now, apart from aphids. But we also saw lots of prominent early yellow rust, and that was pretty much top of the agenda regarding the T0 and T1 discussions that we had. But then following the April, as always, the rain did come, which then shifted everybody's focuses from that rust and sort of increased that spend on focus on that Septoria for T2. Questions were being asked, had enough been done at T1? Again, not looking at Septoria earlier on. But the question still remains is, will the rust take a back seat? It does start to creep back up again. So it'll be interesting to see what happens as we get towards the end of the season. But as always, the varietal strengths and weaknesses are always key regarding these seasonal variations. So it's always good to start off with the right variety to help you battle these variations. So hence why we're going to listen to some interesting points around the varieties we've got to offer. So it's just left now. I'll just hand over to Paul to start to discuss through the hybrid barley varieties for the East.
Okay, well, thank you, Matt. I'm Paul Roach, Seeds Technical Manager for the hybrid barley portfolio here in the UK, and just want to take you through the benefits of hybrid barley and then go through my top 3 picks for the East. So if we look at the 6 healthy habits of successful hybrid barley growers, then they're all detailed here, and variety choice is absolutely key in this process, because choosing the right variety is the first step to success. And there's a lot of choice out there. You look at the recommended list, there's a lot of varieties to choose from, but it's important not just to pick any variety, but to pick the variety that's right for you. And we'll just have a look at the hybrids now and how they fit into that. So really, the hybrids have an exceptional track record, and high yield, consistent yield is the absolute foundation of the choice for growing a hybrid. And if we look at the past 7 seasons of recommended lists, then we can see in each and every single one of those seasons and in each and every region that the hybrids have topped the RL. So this is an absolutely unrivaled track record of performance. But more than that, when we grow these varieties in a farm situation, as we did when we did the cashback yield guarantee and adjusted the inputs and the agronomy, the timings and the harvest date to the actual specific variety in the field, we could see that you could extend these benefits, and the difference between the hybrid and the conventional varieties was even bigger than it was on the recommended list. But it's much more than high yield and consistent yield. And really, when you look at hybrid barley, it offers a whole range of additional benefits, and they really fit into 2 main buckets. So reliability and security at one side, and flexibility on the other. So starting with grass weed suppression, that's blackgrass, brome, ryegrass. Demonstrated there that the varieties work well at suppressing those grass weeds. Hybrid barley as a second cereal is a really strong alternative to second wheats. So there's no T3 ear sprays, there's no orange wheat blossom mid sprays. And if you're looking to go early because you're forced to cover the acres that you have and you've got grass weeds, then arguably the barley is a better option than winter wheat because it's more competitive. And of course, early harvest with barley helps you to kind of spread the workload at harvest time and avoid the overlap with the wheat harvest. And of course, grain in the barn gives you an opportunity to sell and create some early cash flow to pay some of the bills. And then we'll look at specific weight in the rest of the talk, but made a lot of progress here, and all the varieties are giving you a strong sense of security and confidence that you can exceed the grain contract spec. And with the current straw prices being roughly double what they were last year, then we can create some really useful additional income from the straw. And most of these varieties have good disease profiles. Some are really very good, and they'll give you some flexibility on your application timings. And then we talked about the early harvest. That's helping us to get in early with the following winter oilseed crops, get the seeds in the ground, get them up and away while there's moisture in there, and avoid that first migration of cabbage stem flea beetle. And then, of course, fundamentally, dependable performance, having varieties that are consistent and do the job every year, reduce risk and help you to get to that budget figure for yield. So we're talking about specific weight. 6-row varieties and hybrids including that have had a bad rap over the last few years for specific weight, but we've really focused on this, and this is a big success story. We've made a hell of a lot of progress over the last 18 years. The green line shows the average of the hybrids on the recommended lists during that period, and you can see that's really climbed up there, and the trend line just gives you that overall trend of performance there. And you see now the green line is at the same place as the orange line, so the grain quality of the hybrids is now equivalent to the 2-row feeds, which are shown in that orange line. But we don't buy averages, we buy varieties, and when you actually dig down into the detail of each and every single one of the varieties, you see they're really well placed for specific weight in that top 75% of the distribution. So all the hybrids are giving you good specific weight. So moving on to the varieties, my 3 top choices for the East are Kingsbarn, Bazooka and Belmont, and we look at each of those in a bit more detail. Starting with Kingsbarn, this is the market leading hybrid variety in the UK currently, an outstanding variety that's proved to be really popular with many growers, and it's got a proven track record of performance. But really the secret for this variety in a sense is it's got the winning combination of high yield in all regions and soil types with high specific weight and good all-round agronomics, both disease and lodging profile. And of course, you get the grass weed suppression too. So great choice for the East. And we were talking about the kind of the balance of the profile for this. And if we plot treated yield versus specific weight, then varieties with higher yield and higher grain quality be in that top right corner. And you can see there that Kingsbarn really well placed and offering a really well balanced profile and demonstrated performance on farm as well. Moving on to Belmont, really an exceptional variety for yield, kind of really appeal to people in the East who are pushing for the highest yields available, and those people on light land too, where it's got a really strong performance. And of course, it's been in the market for a few years now, has a good track record of delivering these promises on the farm and producing high yields, and you're also getting the blackgrass too. But when we talk about the track record for the variety, this is really good. It's been the #1 variety on the recommended list for the past 4 years, tied with a couple of varieties in one season, but really unrivaled there. It's trusted, dependable, and it's got that commercial performance you can rely on. And then my final pick is Bazooka, which is giving you, again, proven track record, and it's tried and trusted. And this variety comes with a high degree of environmental stability, as we'll see in the next slide. But more than that, you've got a good, robust disease profile to the wet weather diseases and getting the grass weed suppression too. So for many growers, Bazooka will have been their very first encounter with the magic of the grassweed phenomenon with blackgrass here in the East, and they've seen the magic happen on their own farms. So having a look at this environmental stability, I plotted a stability index, and you notice that the axis is in reverse there because low values indicate greater stability. So varieties which are more stable with more yield are going to be in that top right corner. You can see Bazooka is really well placed in that top corner, and it's offering this kind of reliable and dependable performance that you can rely on. It grows well. And then finally, just kind of coming through the grassweed. So blackgrass is bad enough for many growers here in the East. But brome and ryegrass are even worse because they're more competitive at the same population density. And the hybrids will suppress all of these grass weeds effectively, but not wild oats, which is taller, more aggressive, and can get above the crop canopy. And really, just to say, though, it's not the magic bullet. If you're looking to manage your grass weeds, you've got to deploy a range of measures here. And this slide just kind of illustrates that. But of course, if any of the other elements are compromised, like you're forced to drill early, so you lose the benefits of delayed drilling, then you're leaning on the hybrid barley varieties and the higher seed rates of those varieties just even more. And if you want to join me for a tour around some of the trials that we've done in previous years, then have a look at the Roach Approach video series on YouTube. Thank you very much, and I'll pass over to Matt.
Thanks, Paul. That's great. And good morning, everybody. My name's Matthew Ball. I'm the seeds technical expert for winter wheat, and I'm delighted just to have a few minutes today to take you through my top 3 wheat varieties for this autumn. So my top 3 for the East this autumn are SY Insitor, Gleam and Graham. We've got 3 high-yielding hard feed wheats, each with unique growth habits and agronomic profiles, which will help determine the right variety for you and your farm. So my first pick is our newest member, SY Insitor, the highest yielding hard feed on the recommended list with outstanding grain quality. So why SY Insitor? Well, arguably the most attractive trait for a hard group 4 is yield, and SY Insitor remains the highest yielding hard group 4 option. And it's commanded that position on the recommended list for both years it's been on there. And as you can see on the slide, it does 104% in the East, making it a very attractive option there. But SY Insitor doesn't just deliver in the ideal conditions. SY Insitor is the highest yielding variety on light land, which we believe is linked to its aggressive root development. It has also performed exceptionally well as both a first and a second wheat. And then finally, but importantly, in many areas of the country, but particularly the east with blackgrass pressures, it's a really strong late drilled option, which is important in the battle against grass weeds. However, we know variety choice is much more than just yield, and SY Insitor has several wider benefits to broaden its appeal and make it a secure option on farm. It brings excellent grain quality, most notably for its spec weight combined with good Hagberg falling numbers. It also has robust resistance to Septoria tritici, actually matching that of Graham, and then orange wheat blossomage as well to help simplify pest management. So the next variety we have is Gleam, the variety that adapts to all soils, all regions, and all seasons. So Gleam, as I say, can adapt to all scenarios and has rightly become the variety that your growers can rely on. Just to clarify exactly what the chart is showing here, Gleam is delivering 103% of the controls across a majority of the scenarios. So we've got UK yield, Eastern yield, Western yield, yield for several individual seasons, first wheat, second wheat, early sown, late sown, and so on. So what is really clear is Gleam delivers unrivaled consistency, which we believe is an important consideration with variety choice. So just to go in a bit deeper on why we think Gleam is an excellent choice for the East. Well, firstly, it's yield consistency again, but not just in different farm situations, but across individual seasons as well. So as you'll all be very aware, we've had several consecutive challenging seasons recently, and that's tested variety resilience. And as you can see, Gleam has adapted incredibly well. And I think that really demonstrates the value of varieties with proven on-farm performance, which deliver year on year. Secondly, we've got flexibility. So clearly, Gleam can suit a vast range of scenarios, but importantly, it has the widest drilling window of the Syngenta varieties. Its growth habit lends it to relatively early drilling, but it's also safe to drill up right through to the middle of February, so giving you that confidence that you will get it in the ground, whatever the weather throws at you. And then finally, just on this slide, Gleam is a secure option, which is driven by high untreated yields, orange wheat blossomage resistance like SY Insitor, and finally, good straw characteristics. So Gleam, an extremely versatile variety, which is a great fit for the East. And then finally, but certainly not least, we've got Graham, the consistent and secure option. So Graham is an extremely popular option on farm already, with several years of proven high performance, which is largely driven by an excellent disease profile and good straw characteristics. And something that's gained more interest over the past couple of seasons, having experienced the challenges with planting winter crops, is early drilling. And whilst we only advocate that in areas where there are lower grassweed pressures and lower aphid pressure, there are some areas where it's still appropriate, and where it is, Graham has all the right characteristics. So it has a slow and prostrate overwinter development, stiff straw, and excellent resistance to the key primary diseases of yellow rust and Septoria tritici. Now, Graham is already widely recognised as a low-risk option. It's got proven on-farm performance, has excellent disease resistance and stiff straw, which drives those high untreated yields. It's also the joint earliest maturing variety on the recommended list, which will be of particular interest to those growers looking to spread workload and harvest risk. And then finally, on this slide that we have, we can see that independent data has shown that Graham is associated with low take-all buildup when grown as a first wheat. Now, this is important as it directly reduces the amount of take-all left in the soil post-harvest, which of course then reduces the risk of take-all in your subsequent cereals. So because of that, we think Graham is a seriously good fit as a first wheat for the East. And then just finally from me, Syngenta remain focused on bringing through varieties which combine both high yield and robust Septoria resistance. And as you can see, our newest member, SY Insitor, carries a 6.8 for Septoria, whilst keeping in that high yield potential, which actually matches that of Graham. So for the best combinations of both yield and Septoria resistance, look no further. So that's it from me. Thanks very much for listening, and over to you, Kath.
Okay, good morning, everybody. My name's Catherine Hamlin. I'm the technical manager for malting barley, and I'm going to take you through some of our malting barley varieties suitable for the East. So we'll start with a good news story. What you can see on the graph on the left-hand side is the winter malt purchases from 2012 up to 2020. And you can see that we had quite a large drop over the purchases. So this is the grain that's purchased by the maltsters for malting. and we had quite a drop in 2020. Now, this was partly due to the difficult planting season, but also quite significantly due to COVID restrictions and the fact that we haven't been able to drink very much beer recently. So the good news is the MAGB, the Maltsters Association of Great Britain, have recently published a new update, a summer update. And in that, they said that they expect that the purchases as a whole to return to a level similar to 2019. So that's a really, really good news story for anybody growing malting barley this year, and also showing confidence in the malting barley market going forward. So a good news story for anybody looking to grow malting barley for 2022. So where do you start when you're looking for a variety? Well, a good place to have a look at to begin with is the MBC approved list. So this is a list that's produced by the Malting Barley Committee, which is a large group of maltsters and brewers and end users. And they look at a number of criteria and decide whether or not a variety should be used for brewing, malt distilling and grain distilling. And it's a great place to start. For the winter malts, you can see 3 varieties there: Flagon, Craft and Electrum. And then for the spring barley, we're split into the different markets, and there's lots of options there. A thing to note, though, is that locally, different end users will prefer different varieties. So it's a very good idea to check to see what the preferred varieties are in your area before you decide on a variety. So we're going to have a look at our 2 winter malting barley options, Craft and Electrum, and also have a look at Laureate as a spring malting barley option for 2022 as well. So if we start with Craft. So Craft is the #1 winter malting barley across the whole of the UK. It's a very, very popular variety with the brewers and the maltsters, and there's a high market demand for this variety. It's a really reliable variety to manage, very consistent yields across all the regions, and it does perform very well in the east. And it has a really good disease profile, so 6 ratings for all the major foliar diseases, and also has really good straw strength, so it's got an 8 rating for lodging. It's got great grain quality, high specific weight, low screenings, which was a big advantage over the previous big variety, which was SY Venture. And it also has a high hot water extract, which is a great indication of the alcohol yield, which is why it's been so popular with the end users. Our second variety is Electrum. Electrum is a newer addition to the malting barley family at Syngenta. It's got full MBC approval for brewing, and it is the top yielding winter malting variety. It has its highest performance in the east, so it's a very good option for this area. It's got quite a different growth habit, so it's got very vigorous autumn growth and is very quick to reach all of the application timings. And this results at the end of the year with early maturity equaling the earliest of all of the winter barleys in overall. As I said, it's got full approval for brewing, and it is growing in popularity. So again, check locally for contracts for this one, and it's gaining support from all of the major maltsters in the east. So both of these winter malts are brewing varieties, and so the aim is to look for around about 1.65 to 1.85% grain nitrogen. And we've done a couple of trials on these 2 varieties over the years and found that 2-split application is really the best way to achieve that brewing spec. So if we move now to Laureate, Laureate is the UK's most popular spring malting barley. It has full approval for both brewing and malt distilling. So it has multiple market options, which makes it a great favourite with the maltsters. And it's hugely supported by both the brewers and the distillers. So it has just huge a following by these by the end users, and great demand, and we expect to see that for the next couple of years. Again, it's a very reliable variety. It's got good overall disease resistance with a 6 rating to Rinco, which is very high for a spring malting barley. And its consistency is both on farm and all the way through the malting process as well, with good grain characteristics, and that's why it's so popular with the end users. So as Laureate can be used for both brewing and malt distilling, we've got a little bit of data here from some of our trials. We've been doing trials on Laureate for about 4 or 5 years now, and we've seen very, very consistent results. What we've done is looked at increasing rates of nitrogen, and you can see that the yield does increase up to a point, but it tailors off. And actually what you're finding, especially when you're looking at those highest rates, is that potentially your nitrogen in the grain might go over specifications because it's no longer going towards yield. These modern brewing varieties are innately high yielding, and they don't need a lot of nitrogen to gain their yield potential. We did the similar trials with malt distilling, but looking at a lower yield, a lower total nitrogen, and you can see very similar that the yield is increasing, but getting at those high rates, you are really getting to the almost too high to get the spec for malt distilling. So very briefly, I'll just go over the other varieties that we have in the East. Craft and Electrum are joined by Flagon, which is our heritage variety, and this is a very popular variety in East Anglia, with contracts available for this. It's quite a niche variety, so do check for contracts for Flagon before you grow it. And similarly, Fairing is a grain distill spring barley, looking for a very high nitrogen, above 1.8%. And again, this is a contract specific variety, so do check locally if you're interested in growing that variety. Our 2 new spring barleys, SY Tungsten and SY Splendor, are currently going through the malting process to see whether they will get full approval. They've just gained provisional 2, which is excellent, the next step, and we hope that we would get full approval next year. Tungsten is being looked at for both brewing and malt distilling, and Splendor is a brewing variety.
Thank you, Catherine. And also thank you to Paul and Matt for some really good presentations, packed full of really useful information. So we've got plenty of questions, so we'll see how many we can get through. I'll go back to you first, Paul. Question of how late can hybrid barley be drilled, and does the seed rate need to change?
Okay, well, typical window is mid-September to mid-October, and guideline seed rates there are probably around 200 in a normal standard scenario, up to 250 in a scenario where conditions are compromised, whether that's the kind of seed bed or whether that's grass weeds, for example. When you go through past that mid-October to the end of October, just kind of thinking a little bit more carefully whether conditions are suitable, and then thinking about the kind of boring stuff like mathematics. And really what you're trying to do is to achieve a field establishment, which is going to give you around 160 to 180 plants per meter square established. So the guideline numbers that we talk about for the standard window make some assumptions to do the maths for us. So yeah, just lifting up those seed rates a little bit more, especially if conditions are compromised. And then if you're going into November, some people have managed it and been successful, but you are accepting more establishment risks at that point, and also a lower yield potential, although the plants will still vernalize. So again, important to do the mathematics and think about the field establishment that you're going to achieve in that field with that seed bed, with that soil type. So I think that's it.
Perfect. Thank you, Paul. Question for you now, Matt. Gleam performs exceptionally well on my farm. Why should I move to Insitor? Yeah,
great question. Well, firstly, I'd say, as you've just seen from the presentation, both are great options in the East. So if going well with Gleam, I'd say there's no requirement to switch, but maybe it'd be worth trying it as a partner. But there are 3 clear areas for me which might sway me towards Insitor rather than Gleam. Firstly, yield potential, particularly on light land, which might be a particular interest for some Eastern growers. Secondly is grain quality, particularly the specific weight, which can be a challenge for some people on the light land if the conditions are against you, just giving you that extra confidence that you'll be hitting those minimum requirements. And then finally, the robust Septoria resistance. So Matt, as you mentioned at the start, the wet weather of late has brought in reasonable levels of late Septoria. That's happened right across the country, including in the east, and that really shows the value of varietal resistance. SY Insitor actually matches that of Graham with a 6.8, which then gives you that flexibility with fungicide timings and programs. So they're the key elements I'd be thinking about when looking at the two varieties.
Great points. Very good. Got time for one last one. Make the hat trick. Catherine, question for you. Why should I change to winter malting barley from my spring malts?
Okay, so around about a quarter of the maltsters' purchases of barley grain in the south of England, south and east of England, is winter malting barley. And there's a decent premium for the winter malts at the moment as well. So really, it's that market demand that would be driving you to switch to a winter malting barley. And when you move to a winter crop, you do have that yield potential lift as well. So it's really very much demand driven, a secure market to grow for once you've got a contract. And you do have that yield increase potential as well with a winter crop.
Good job. I think it's that secure market that really makes it an attractive option from my point of view. Good. So that's all we've got time for. So I think it's just left to me just to thank everybody for attending, and hope to see everybody soon in the flesh, so to speak. But thanks for everyone. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.